Hello, researchers! This is Dr. Vernie Decano, the lecturer in research, and welcome to our Project TVL Textbook video lesson. This time we will discuss the research hypothesis, a quantitative research. The journey of a research study begins by asking a question. We ought to ask numerous questions about many things for curiosity's sake, but researchers like you would like to carry on what you have started from asking questions to formulate research hypotheses. However, whether the research study provides an effective conclusion depends on how well one develops a good research hypothesis. In this video lesson, there are things you need to understand in order to develop a skill in formulating a research hypothesis. Forming a hypothesis would be of great value to the researchers. Take note that research hypothesis is the last part of a statement of the problem and can be seen in quantitative research but optional in qualitative research. In the previous lesson, you have learned the features in writing chapter 1 of your research study entitled The Problem and Its Background. Under that is the rationale of research, then the importance of having the background of the study, which is also incorporated in that chapter. This background of the study is the main reason to provide a link between the topic and the research questions mentioned in the statement of the problem. All of these topics were discussed previously, and it is wise for you to watch first the previous video clip about the statement of the problem before going through this video lesson. That is to provide you researchers an insight on the topic. In connections to the new lesson, we will be able to learn the steps in crafting the strong, testable hypothesis based on the specific sub-question you have developed in the statement of the problem. This testable hypothesis is a hypothesis that can be proved or disproved using statistical tools as a result of experimentation. So in order to prove or disprove your hypothesis, you need to do an experiment and take measurements or make observations. You may repeat your experiment over and over again if it is necessary. Research hypothesis is vital to all research endeavors, whether qualitative, quantitative, exploratory, or explanatory. As indicated in the slide, research hypothesis is a statement and not a question that brings in a research sub-question in the statement of the problem along with the presented outcome, which transpires in chapters 4 or 5. In that context, specific sub-problems must be done first to identify two variables before predicting their relationship or difference in hypothesis. In developing a testable research hypothesis, it takes skill, however, along with careful attention to how the proposed research method treats the development and testing of hypotheses. As a researcher, we need to consider the 7 steps of quantitative research scientific method. Within these 7 steps, you will be able to understand where we are at in the process of developing your research study. The first step is ask a question and observe by using your senses. Second step, do background research and identify the problem that you have observed. Then, here we are in the third step, construct hypothesis. Keep in mind that writing the hypothesis is an early step in the process of doing research output. The steps in the slide form the basic outline of the scientific method. After crafting your hypothesis, you may proceed to the next step, and that is to test your hypothesis by doing an experiment. From that step, it is expected that you have gathered your data. After collecting your data, you proceed to step 5. That is to analyze your data by using statistical tools. In this step, you have to make your measurements by doing mathematical calculations. When you have done that, you may take step 6, which is draw your conclusion. Your conclusion must be aligned always with your hypothesis. And finally, the last step, which is reporting. In this step, the researchers need to communicate with the specific persons about the results they have gathered. Whatever the findings, whether the hypothesis is accepted or rejected, let the concerned people be informed. Now, there are many types of hypotheses listed in the books and even in Google. We have simple hypothesis, complex, directional, non-directional, associative and causal hypothesis, null, and last, the alternative hypothesis. But when we say the basic types of research hypothesis, we will just consider the two most common types of hypothesis, the null and alternative hypothesis. Let us dissect these two types. Null hypothesis states a negative statement to support the researcher's findings that there is no relationship between two variables. So we need to identify the two variables, the independent variable and the dependent variable, from the sub-questions in your statement of the problem. Now, null means no effect, no interaction, no association, no existence, or that is empty. That's why it is represented by symbol 0 for null, while capital letter H for hypothesis. But take note here, researchers, that null hypothesis is used a formal basis for testing statistical significance called hypothesis testing, which undergoes several steps. Let us consider this first example. Before crafting your testable null hypothesis, you have to review first the sub-questions in your statement of the problem. This question form that appeared in the slide is an example of sub-question in statement of the problem. Is there a significant relationship between the level of competency of grade 12 TVL students and their demographic profile? Out from this question form, we will make a null hypothesis that is in a statement and not in a question form anymore. Initially, you have to identify the independent and dependent variables from the question form. And the independent variable there is the demographic profile. What makes the profile of our respondents independent variable? This variable can stand alone and it is not changed by other variable you are trying to measure. This variable is what we expect will influence the dependent variable, meaning this is the cause, while the dependent variable is the effect, the result, or outcome. So the dependent variable from the question form is the level of competency. To analyze the two selected variables, if it is correct, will it be the gender of age, which are the demographic profile of the grade 12 students that affect the level of their competency? Now, let us craft our null hypothesis in a negative statement form, and that is, there is no significant relationship between the level of competency of grade 12 TBL students and their demographic profile. Let us dissect the second basic type of hypothesis, which is the alternative hypothesis. Based on the definition, this indicates that it is predicted that there will be relationship and there will be interaction between variables. Alternative hypothesis is a positive research hypothesis that proposes association or significant relationship between variables. This is the exact opposite of null hypothesis, which is a negative statement. But this time, it is a positive statement. Therefore, there is a relationship, there is an effect, there is an association between variables. Example, in the indicated question form in the slide. Let us identify the two variables. Have you identified the independent variable there in the question form already? Well, it is the social media platforms. Then the dependent variable in the question form is the academic performance. Now, let us examine again the two selected variables if we have got the correct choice. Is it because of the use of social media platforms that affect the academic performance of grade 12, whether it is poor or excellent? Get it, researchers? Now, to craft the alternative hypothesis is there is a significant difference between the perception of grade 12 TVL students towards social media platforms and their academic performance. There you have it, researchers. Alright, for you to be able to enhance your skills in crafting your hypothesis, try this activity. The question form is already indicated in the slide. Just fill in the two variables and write your null hypothesis in a statement form and not in a question form. Then, the second item for your activity is the alternative hypothesis. So that's all, researchers. I hope that you have learned from this short video. Once again, this is Dr. Vernie Decano, always reminding you to keep safe and see you in the next video in the project TVL. Goodbye.